Everyone's happy.
Bringing us back from the break.
Everyone's all good. No time out there at all. Everyone's rung their therapist and we're back.
Just a bit of counselling in the break.
Yeah, we're all happy. All up and about it now. Anyway, we've got Mark McConnell back with us. Oh, I've turned the music down. This is such a great intro. Again,
Thank you, mate.
welcome. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
I do appreciate it. If you just give me 1 second, mate. I'm just enjoying a refreshing gulp of my Monster energy drink because when I feel thirsty, when I feel low on energy, Monster is the one for me. Sorry, sponsor shout out.
You know what? I'd love for somebody to actually get their own sponsor from our podcast.
True.
Like, I'd even pay it over us. You know, like if we're like, oh, I was on their podcast and I've got my own podcast now and I've got a sponsor. You're like, what? You're like, yeah, they thought you guys were crap, but they were like, that dude can do an ad. You're like, hey, who was that guy? Because we're looking for a voiceover artist, actually.
Yeah, we need someone who's 42 years old that sounds 15.
Right. So anyway,
we've been through a lot of the work history and the different roles and gaining skills and confidence in all those. And should we move on to when you actually decided to leave Victoria Police?
Yeah. How many years did you end up doing in the end?
So 15.
And did you go out as a neg?
Yes.
So on top?
Yes.
As the prima donna of Victoria Police.
Yeah, 100%. Mate. Aviators. Actually, I was going to say cowboy boots, but I was wearing cowboy boots towards the end.
Were you?
Yeah.
R.M. Williams?
No, I'm talking like
I'm literally trying to get a sponsor.
knee-high, Ariat
Wow.
cowboy boots.
Pant leg
Really?
over, or were you just showing them off?
No, pant was over. But
You weren't the only one wearing cowboy boots, though.
But these were knee highs. Like my thought process was, if I get a job in the country, let's get radical. Like these bad boys are coming out proper. So
I love that you're looking at a demographic that's not all that high of us getting a job. Surely they could just set in the locker for that one time.
yeah, go bag of cowboy boots.
Yeah. Yeah. The old bring out the cubes.
But yes.
So after existing for a decade and a half in one organisation with some very specific and unique roles, what was it like to leave? And
It was scary, mate, I guess, because, you know, I was probably getting towards that point where I was like, there's nothing else I want to do here. There's nothing else I want to do in policing. And I think sometimes, especially with policing, you know, you do hear that, you know, your skills are so sought after on the outside world and things like that. But it's, you know, a lot of coppers, for me, you know, sit there, look at their phone and they think, gee, this is weird. The private sector hasn't given me a call yet and offered me like X amount of
I'm sure I'm getting headhunted any minute now. I'm literally a negotiator.
Yeah, like don't they know? And so it became a bit of a perfect storm where I was put onto this company, Procom Consulting. Actually, they can be my sponsor for today since they're paying my wages.
I feel like they are your sponsor.
Yeah.
They pay your wage, you're being sponsored.
Yeah, fair call. And, you know, do a lot of
Did they actually reach out to you?
no, I got put onto them through the website and things like that. So, and again, it was one of those companies where I didn't know they existed. And then I read the website and it's, you know, they do a lot of stuff with healthcare, corrections, Ambulance Victoria, you know, different industries around negotiation, communication. And I was like, holy cow, that's what I do. And yeah, just got in contact and then one thing led to another, you know, a few meetings and things like that. And then, yeah.
You went direct, didn't you? Like you were in the job and then you had a job.
Correct.
Or did you have a...
No, so I went from the job and then got this new one and then that was me.
You were studying though to be a teacher.
Yep. So
what happened there?
still going.
Oh.
Yep, look out. So the new job kind of put a little bit of a hold on it. But yeah, that school teaching sort of route was my way out. Like I said at the start, never been to uni, didn't have any trades. So the writing was on the wall. I started that course in 2019. So the writing was on the wall for a little while.
And so, yeah, it's probably a bit unique as well that you had something and you prepared to go to it. How did that feel having that? Was it still a massive jump? Did you have any communication issues with the real world and what, you know, your resume looked like, things like that?
Yeah, mate. So I mean, holy cow, last time I would have actually made a real resume would have been in
Franklin Fresh?
what was that? Franklin's Fresh. Yeah. So to make that jump and we've touched on it. Policing is there if you want it. If you want to ride out the next 20 years, you can ride out the next 20 years. So to jump across to a company, in the private world, and I had to, what if this doesn't work? What am I going to do? And going back to the school teaching degree, that was probably going to be my fallback. But, you don't know in the private sector, building companies are going bust. Everything's going bust. Like, what am I? Victoria Police ain't going bust. That's always there. So it's like, well,
not with the revenue they raise.
Hey-o. So yeah, it was scary jumping across. And
the other thing I hear a lot from people is, they'd be leaving the superannuation and all the leave. Did you have reservations, even with a job lined up, that there'd be some big differences, or you wouldn't have some of those benefits and lifestyle?
To be honest, mate, I'm not a huge numbers man, and I always get told about our good super, but I don't really understand it. So, and again, mate, you get to that point in life where it's like, well, do I want to be less than happy for the next 20 years of my life so I can take an extra cruise when I'm 64 years old? Or do I risk things, and do I take that challenge of, hey, well, why not try and be happy now? Maybe you can do that.
That's the thing with a lot of the imposter thing, where people are like, I can't do anything else.
Yeah.
And it's like, the benefits are great here, this and that. You're like, do you like your job? They're like, well, no. But it's like, if I stay in, when I'm 65 plus, I've got a great super that's going to look after me. I've got a stable job for the next however long it is. And it's like, right, so how far off retirement are you? They're like, 25 years.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a long time, bro, to do some stuff that you were already not all that excited about.
And it's almost, I guess, here's one for you. Feel free to use this. It's almost like a reverse imposter kind of thing, where people get into the police, and it's comfortable. When you get past that initial imposter phase, and you're at an office, even for me, for 8 years, sometimes it's easy to be comfortable. It's easy to stay out there. And I guess
the imposter then is being a civilian.
100%.
Mate, living in the army is the same.
Yep.
Like you're like, I have zero qualifications to anything as a normal human.
Yeah. And that was, I guess, something that I had to consider when I was getting out is, am I going to fit in? And, some things I have fit in, pretty well. So other things I've had to change a fair bit as well, going into that civilian world, it's different. So 100%.
So this is a topic that we really want to dive in as an ongoing thing, because a lot of people, emergency services, military, they, will face exactly what you did. Before we dive into what you are doing, were there any observations or learnings or things that, you think would help others in those considerations or making that jump?
Yeah, it's just, I guess, try and not educate yourself, but try and be as prepared as you can when you're getting out, because like I couldn't think of much worse than just, getting to that point and just being like, yep, I'm out. And then, I still remember I was at work, as in the police, and I was, starting to get a little bit like, oh, what can I do here? And so I jump on Seek, right? I don't even know if that's still the popular one, but that's the one I remembered. So I jump on Seek, and I'm like, I wonder what jobs are out there. And I type in Negotiator. And the first one that came up with like a relevant thing was a out of hours office cleaner. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. So, and as I said, that the company I work for now, I didn't know they existed. And I still remember going to it was like a businessy lunch and things like that. And, it's all fancy, and companies around that we don't know exists, because policing is so insular, where you've got the blinders on. Like, you might know about moving to a different unit, but you just forget about everything that's on the outside. So if you can have a look and, make contacts, networking, there's nothing wrong with touching base with someone, saying, hey, would this be, maybe something I'd be interested in? Is this something that you'd be interested in me? Just getting your feet wet a little bit, so you can feel confident when you do leave that, it sounds a bit corny, but everything's going to be okay. And when you've been in that VicPol bubble for so long, to get out of it is hard, because you're like, holy cow, I'm in the big wide world now. So it'd just be, the networking and, speaking to people, reaching out to people. Like, I think that's probably the most important thing.
Other people get themselves into like financial slavery, basically, where you're like, I'm a sergeant now, I've got a pay rise. And then you're like, cool, got a new car. Or you're like, I've got I've got a job here that gets me an extra 10 grand a year or whatever. You're like, oh, great, I'm doing extinction.
Yeah.
And now your mortgage is costing more. And it's like you've got like literally my money, my problems. It's like a lot of it's financial obligations that keep you in the job. And it's like regardless of what you're going through, you can be like, my bucket is full.
Yeah.
But my bucket is going to be absolutely smashed if I don't have an income to pay my mortgage. And it's like now you're doing a job that's literally affecting your mental health, and the biggest pressure you have is trying to support your family. And you're like, it's the more responsibilities you have, the harder that job becomes.
Yeah, and it almost becomes that easy, not easy, but convenient kind of a thing where you're like, I'm just going to ride this out.
Yeah.
And like you said, the finish line's in sight. I've only got 16 more years to go. It's like that's pretty far away, bro.
I think you really need to start looking at, is doing what I'm doing right now for the next 16 years of my life less scary than me potentially being happy?
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's really hard to do if you're not a visual person that can see themselves doing something else that they might be into. I think that's where short courses is great. Like if you're just like, you know what, I'm actually thinking I might want to be a hairdresser or whatever it is. Like you can do a short course on basket weaving or whatever it is that you're potentially interested in. If you're like, this actually brings me joy, and then doing it as a side hustle and then doing whatever. I think that seems to be the easiest way to start doing something new. If you're like, you do it something and then you're like, I hate it. Or you can do a leave without pay and maybe do it for like 3 months or something and see if you can support yourself on some other wage.
Yeah.
It's like long service leave is a great thing to be able to do if you take that at half pay. But again, you've got to do 10 years before you can do something like that. But
were there any, you said you typed in Negotiator and like cleaning came up. Was that something common where you had to change the way or the words that you use? So I'm thinking maybe negotiating actually is like sales. So instead of negotiating people in a surrender, you were selling them on that surrender. So is that what that relatable skill would be, or what sort of words, say from a resume point of view, did you have to change the way that you promoted yourself?
Well, I guess with my job, it was lucky, as in I just fell into it kind of thing. So I spoke to the boss. He was an ex-negotiator. And so, we had a meeting and then I got a job, which is beautiful.
the old tap on the shoulder McConnell, they call him.
There's a pattern here.
No imposter because he already knows a bloke.
But and it's a lot of the buzzwords, I guess, communication, risk assessment, working under pressure, that's stuff that we do every day in the policing world and companies. I remember talking to a guy at the CERT office, and he knew people in the private world, and he was saying that there's a big change now in between getting someone in who might have a good resume, or they can really work well on Excel spreadsheets, where they're looking at getting the quality of person in. So I can teach you how to do an Excel spreadsheet. That's cool, but I can't teach you how to be a leader. I can, but if you've got those, it's the same as the military, it's the same as policing. We bring so much to the table that we don't realise compared to, I guess, a lot of people, and then they can train us up on the system. So I said it earlier as a joke, but you're not going to get a random call from some company and just go, hey, Macca, we've heard we want a headhunter. Like that's not how it works. You have to put yourself out there.
Which is awkward because that's literally what you did.
I think Berso should start. I think Berso should start that company. By the way, the headhunting emergency service.
We have spoken about that.
Yeah. So really, that people that found themselves where you did should be putting themselves out there, starting to network, have conversations, chase down colleagues they know that left to do something years before, and try and get some mentoring in that.
100%. And even now, like it was always. I mean, it's been 18 months since I got out, but that. Now I know probably 5 or 6 kind of people that are out of the job, whereas when I first got out, no one had. That my vintage of copper wasn't leaving yet. It was either before me or after me.
Turns into a massive exodus though. Like it's funny when you see someone else do it. Like the first person, you're like, nah, good luck, mate. You're on your own. And then once 1 or 2 people do it, now you're like, oh, it's possible.
Yeah. And that was a funny thing when I was leaving, I just didn't want to have to face, people telling me, think about the super, think about this, think about that. Not one person from a senior connie to the inspector, they were all stoked for me. Everyone was like, holy shit, like that's awesome, man. That's awesome that you're going out there. It's awesome you're taking the risk. Because again, with that policing, I think some people, it's cool to talk, but to actually step out of that comfort zone is pretty massive. So yeah, it was good.
So since you've never felt like an imposter through the entirety of your life up to there, how did you feel getting into a civilian commercial job, and what are you doing, and what's that been like?
It's yes. So short answer, yes.
Finally, we got one.
We got one. All right. So what do we now?
No, that's because you worded him up in the meeting. Like, hey, can you just say it?
Yeah, it hurt when you kicked me. And
Just check that box for us.
And said, say it.
Yeah, hold that push-up position until you are an imposter.
Yeah, but I guess even going back a little bit, you do feel that need to be accepted means, and happy to talk about it a little bit later, but if you have that inherent need to be accepted wherever you are, then you always feel uncomfortable. You always feel like a little bit of an imposter. So whether I'm chilled or whatever, but moving into the private sector, it's wild. As in, like going to those business lunches and things like that. You're like, this isn't me, man. This
I can order what for lunch? Sorry,
yeah. And it's you're
Somebody's having a beer. It's like 14 different types of duck, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
What is all this rubbish?
It's like those people have a beer and then they leave, and you're like, wait, is this on? Are we doing this right now? And you're meeting people from different industries, and insurance companies, and all these. Most of them are all really down to earth and really cool. But even now I'm doing I do a lot of Teams meetings and things like that, and I'm terrified that they're going to be like, well, hang on a minute, yeah, cool, you're a copper, but what about this, or what about that, or you find yourself trying to get into a groove. Like, we'll do business proposals. I've got no idea how to do a business proposal. I know how to speak to people. So when the boss man is like, hey, Macco, I need you to do this, doesn't get more imposter than sitting there trying to fumble your way through it. You hand it in like you're in grade 3 trying to get an exam marked.
Because you don't have that, what was it, like the autofill form where you literally just do drop-down boxes like we used to do?
Yeah.
It's like, these are your 4 options. Which one do you want?
Yeah, and even those I used to get wrong sometimes.
So what is your name part?
Yeah.
This is I'm finding this interesting because, again, Burso and I were at this like strengths seminar this morning, and this sort of exact scenario came up where they were saying, you're now telling us all the things you think you can't do that the rest of the team can do, but they probably hired you because all of the unique things that you can do. But we always project onto, those common things. So
Yeah.
that's really highlighted that for me from this morning.
It is very like first responder military to focus on your weaknesses, because we're like, how can we bring our weaknesses up? Whereas a lot of the private sector is like, these are their strengths. This is what I've got them for. I don't need them to do that because I've got other people's strengths here. So it's like if you're amazing at doing accounting or whatever it is, they're not going to go, hey, we need the accounting guy to go down there and change that bloke's tire. So it's funny when you're like, because you'll be sitting there going, why have they hired me? Like, that guy's way better at this job than I am. That guy's way better at this than I am. But you're not looking at what do I do better than other people. And that's an unfortunate side effect of being so team related, where you literally can't focus on what your strengths are and you bring to the team. You're like, I need to keep where I'm at on the team. I need to do my role so the team works better as a thing, and I need to lift my weaknesses up so I'm not letting anyone down. Whereas they're like, I'm amazing at communication. I'm going to focus on that, and I'm going to kill it and show everyone else how to do communication because I do it better than them.
And that's actually a good point, mate. It's something I've never really considered in the private world, but you're bang on 100%. And it's and even reflecting that, I'm not great at business stuff, but I'm okay. I think I'm good in a classroom. So, maybe we can work on that, but you're always constant.
Which is funny considering you came from being an instructor in multiple different areas.
Yeah.
I wonder how they put that together.
Yes, excellent point.
Never was a detective, obviously.
No, yeah. Too much paperwork, mate, for that sort of thing.
And so what have you been doing for them, and have you been playing to your strengths in that role?
Yeah, mate. So as I said, occupational violence is massive, and it's probably one of those things as a copper where we'll go in there and talk about situational awareness and different things like that, and you can see a lot of times in the room they're like, wow, like stuff that we think's basic. Watch people's hands. If we have two people, make sure one person's doing the talking, the other people are looking out for anything you may miss, and sometimes you do that, but as I said, company wise, it's wild because it's occupational violence is everywhere. So it's as I touched on, we do Ambulance Victoria, we do various corrections places around the country. Healthcare is massive with the nurses.
They get subjected to a lot of violence in hospital.
Yeah,
and that ED is crazy.
Yeah, and I heard you guys talking about it, on Dan's podcast where it's
over 1,000 listens on that by now.
Is it really? Let's get 1,100 on this one then.
Exponential every day.
But that's something as a copper that I don't understand, and I hate it. Violence towards healthcare professionals, violence towards ambulance officers. It doesn't make any sense to me. But it's what they're subjected to. So, and I guess it's that, hopefully we can help a little bit with some of the things that we show them. And yeah, it's good. I love the variety.
At least it gives them, it might give them time to create space to save them from being injured or whatever else it is, like even if it gives you enough time to go and recognize a pre-fire indicator or whatever it is, where you're like, oh, this guy's actually going to blue me. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to get enough space that he's not going to make contact with me. Like at least if they've got that, that's their heads up. And then if you can then teach them some sort of diffusing situation or whatever else it is, it's like that person gets to go home and not be injured. The fact that they need to learn that when you're literally there to help everybody is bizarre to me. But the people that go into ED a lot of the time are drug affected and not really thinking straight. So it's a bit.
Yeah. And it's wild, mate. Like talking about that imposter syndrome, I'm now almost the essence of an imposter when I walk into these facilities. Just got back from Darwin and spent 4 days up there working with security people, and you want to feel like an imposter, walk into a room in Darwin as a Victorian and they look at you straight away and they're like, you don't know, man. You don't know what it's like up here. So you've got to address that and overcome it. And the last thing I ever want to do is you don't want to be that copper walking into a room or ex-copper, with the popped up collar and the aviators.
Let me tell you a thing or two, mate.
Gather around, kids. Like you want to lose a room real quick.
Yeah, so, take a knee, face out.
Yeah. So literally at the start of every session, it's something I've got to overcome and give it a crack. So most of the time it works okay. Some people you can't get on board, but that's all right.
So you're working in a very specific role, but have most of the things you did through policing been transferable? Are there any massive gaps where you've had to adapt?
It's probably going back to me just as a person being comfortable in those social environments and things like that. So, going to meetings with people, occasionally you do networking events, which, let's be brutally honest, I thought they were a piss take, but they're massive. You go out to lunch with a client and you talk, they see you're a decent person, hopefully, and a lot of times business can flow from that. So it's really wild, and doing, expos and, the boss man does most of those, but they're huge as well. And, you start to deal with some big clients and then you get referred onto. So it's just getting my head around it of like, I don't consider myself a businessman and I don't feel comfortable trying to do that. Like we were talking about sales before, I couldn't do it, but I'm passionate and I believe in what we're doing. So you kind of become a salesman ad hoc, I guess, like on the fly. So.
I think it's interesting you just said passion, because I've always thought as well, like I'm not a natural salesman, but when there's something we've wanted to achieve, I think we all are natural salespeople. So again, going back to Negotiator, so what you would give them like a surrender plan and some options, I see that as you were selling them. It wasn't for like a monetary exchange, but you had the passion to resolve that incident. That's sales 101 as far as I see it. We're just not very good at contextualizing the things that we're trying to sell sometimes.
Yeah.
You also look at sales and it's like you get a new phone and you're like, this is actually amazing, boys. You need to get around this. Or someone gets a new watch when they came to work. They're like, mate, it does
you become
all
the
this.
advocate.
Yeah, it does all this. Like, you've got a good product, you'll sell it. So, like, if you've got a workplace that you're happy with, you are telling everybody it's an amazing workplace.
Yeah.
Like I remember hitting you up for a job, like because I got out and I had no job, obviously. I was like, got any work? He's like, nope. He's like, I'm keeping that for myself. I was like, that's a heads up that he likes that workplace. He's like, I'm thinking about getting out and I'm thinking about getting this job. So, no, there's no one there, mate. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so just in summary, I don't take you in my car and I don't give you jobs.
Yeah.
I've got a
The Dirty Laundry podcast
question.
coming out.
I've got a leading question as we establish your challenge for the podcast. But so you've just said that you struggle with the sort of networking events and engaging maybe some of the future customers. Is that pretty similar to going back to like the Negotiator course where you were asked to just go and engage new people on the street? Is that same kind of feel?
Mate, yeah, 100%. And, depends how far you want to delve into the mental health side of it and, things like that. But
I'm trying to read my notes. You gave me the notes. You're like reading my pages like, it's cheating over there.
I'm happy to talk, it's probably
delve away.
Yeah, it probably became obvious pretty early, I think, in the podcast. Like anxiety is my big thing. And it's always probably started as a social anxiety. So, I'd go through a door, no worries. Go to a scary job, no worries. You ask me to go to a barbecue and I'm like, shit, like the nerves and that sort of thing. But it probably started to creep up on me a little bit more where the best way I can describe it is read a book or listened to an audio book. Jason Fox, he was on... Was it Who Dares Wins or
SAS Australia?
SAS Australia, yeah. So listening to his book, and he went through massive PTSD and things like that. And he was talking about when you start to feel uncomfortable in comfortable situations, that's a problem. And that was me. So you're sitting on the couch and you're like, this doesn't feel like it doesn't feel right. And the ironic thing, I guess, about anxiety is, you kind of go through that phase where you think you can fix it yourself. So, you're listening to books.
Mate, you're a negotiator, of course.
100%. And the advice I always give to people, hey, man, you need to speak to someone. And I guess the delicious irony about anxiety is nothing triggers anxiety more than
needing to speak with someone.
100%. Like,
because that drive towards seeing somebody is so relaxing.
Yeah. And then you sit in the room.
So you said that. What was the phrase? Uncomfortable being in not like normally comfortable situations.
Yeah, if you feel uncomfortable in a usually comfortable situation, that's not good.
So is that, or one part of it, is this overarching, like say at a barbecue, is it because you've then got to tell people things about yourself and introduce, or like what's the component of the comfortable situations?
So for me, again, going to a barbecue and things like that, the second I meet someone is the second I start to think, man, I hope I can get out of this without looking like a doofus, and that's the anxiety talking. But I wouldn't be as, how would you say, arrogant as saying PTSD without, I've spoken to the doctor and he's like, yeah, it's probably PTSD.
I found funny one time. He was like, oh, how's this new bloke? I was like, yeah, he's all right. Like he comes as a bit abrasive or whatever. Like once you get through that, he's really good. And he goes, mate, if I have to talk to a bloke for 3 months, he's like, I don't care. If I have to talk to him for 3 months to be mates with him, he goes, I'm not going to know him.
That was one of my catchphrases was if you introduce me to a person and you have to tell me once you get to know him he's all right, I don't want to get to know him.
It's like the water. It's like, it's fine once you're in.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say if, you get introduced as Mark the cop at the barbecue.
But people get excited and people want to talk to you about it and I hate it. Like I don't, even though we're into hour 7 of this podcast now, like I don't particularly.
I feel like I'm back on the prac for the neck course.
Yeah. I don't actually like talking about myself. So you always deflect and that
you're building your own challenge as you speak. By the way,
oh god, as long as I can have 6 beers before I go, I should be all right. But
no, this sounds good. We'll tell your doc.
But when finally spoke to a doctor. So ended up speaking to a doctor about it.
As in your GP or?
Yeah, GP. Probably 3 months ago. And it's changed my life. So
did you go in there knowing you were going to speak to him or did you do like the 16-year-old going to buy condoms and you bought 17 other things on the way in?
Yeah, I bought a packet of Fizzos, packet of Cheetos and a picture magazine.
So I had a I had a DVA advocate come up and they're like, hey, you need to go and get your white card and go speak to somebody. It's like, yeah, no dramas. And then I went and sat in the locker room and then in the waiting room there. And then like I had this printout where they're like, oh, we want you to check for PTSD, depression, some other 7 other things they wanted me to talk about. Where they're like, oh, you're grinding your teeth and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, yeah, I've got strong jaw, whatever. And then I sat in there and they're like, oh, he's just running a little bit late. I was like, oh, well, I've got another thing to go to, so I'm going to head off. Never been back. It's like, which reminds me of when I was 16 and I bought a knee brace, an elbow brace, a button of glucose jelly beans, and I was buying condoms. So I was like, yeah, did I need the 17 other things? Oh, mate's like, just get them, mate. They're over there. Like, you're spending your life savings on this. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and it's like I said, and it's more just for any listeners or anyone who's, sitting there thinking, oh, do I do it? Should I go? Like, it's a common thing, but 100%.
Yeah, I know a bloke.
You lose nothing if you have a crack.
Yeah, and as I said, it's the irony of anxiety is getting anxious about talking to someone about having anxiety. That's weird, but that's how it was, and everything's it's been so much better since. So,
has he referred you on to speak to anyone else? Or is he just happy to chat to you and that's been enough?
He did ask if I wanted to go see a psych, and I just said,
and then you got anxiety.
Yeah. But look, it is something that I probably will do. Go speak to someone, and my, I said there's no ego, but stand by for an arrogant kind of a statement. But I sort of sit here and I think, well, what are they going to tell me that I don't know? Or which I'm sure there's people listening, sure maybe you boys are sitting there thinking, well, how good do you actually think you are, mate? You don't know everything. But obviously.
I find that the thing that I stress about is them telling me something that I do know and then having a piece of paper that says that what I know and what happens after that.
Yeah.
I think, I can put myself in the gun here, but I've been through, psychologically debriefed quite a few things, but they're things we know, but if nothing else, the process of them making you talk through those stories, you kind of answer your own questions a lot of the time. And that's a lot of their technique as well, which is probably a big negotiating technique as well. But it makes you verbalise things that you've just been holding in. And even, they encourage writing programs and things like that to write short stories about the incidents. And
yeah, and that's probably a good point, mate, because,
I'll start a podcast.
What's that?
Yeah, and just tell the world.
Just have public therapy.
Yeah, 100%. And that's probably something interesting too, mate, because, again, just thinking like everything that all my solutions and all my, going over the anxiety or whatever else is going on, it's all in my own head. So maybe someone, to talk to about it, 100%. So
like all the conversations you had with people sitting on a bridge where you can have the same conversation but you won't listen to yourself talking about it.
Yeah,
and then you're like, I should be able to fix this problem because I literally did this for a job.
Yeah. And I'm sure, mate, that's common in many different, professions or fields of, if people are whatever, I can fix this. I know I've dealt with people. I've given people the right advice and I'd give it to them again tomorrow. But to actually do it yourself, it's different and challenging.
It's like a mechanic with a shit car. It's like fixes everyone else's car and you're like, look at it is, and you're like, mate, yours is a shambles. Yeah. And you're like, you look at all the negs and you're like, how's your head noise going? Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So don't you ever speak to me about that again.
I'll reiterate something we talked about in the break as well, because I think particularly for people still in the the middle of their career, we were saying before that I thought I was the only one having these anxiety and hypervigilance feelings, and you sort of bottle it up, and then it ends up you move on from jobs, and then we have conversations, and you're like, oh, you kidding me? Everybody in the team felt like that, but all the machoism and stuff sort of didn't permit that to be spoken at the time. But, unless you're a real outlier, if you're feeling something, chances are everybody else around you is feeling that stuff as well. And anxiety, hypervigilance, depression, they're not normal things, but they are normal for people that have been through like emergency services roles or military. So, you're going through something that countless other people have, and there's ways and strategies and learnings to work through them and stuff.
Yeah, and look, I think towards the end, I think everyone's good at the motherhood statements.
Yeah.
If you're struggling, speak to someone. If if this and
If you see something, say something.
yeah, and those motherhood statements are great, but to actually sit down and like I haven't spoken about the anxiety really much at all. So even just sitting with you boys now, like just getting that off your chest, it's
a huge audience too that you've just announced it to.
the 3 people
Growing every day.
Yeah, they're going to be stoked.
Our 3 mums. Well,
The other thing too is it's not always formal, and whether it's for you, I think it's been baseball a lot of the time. You have those peers, and you're probably debriefing. Bursa and I were doing some bushwalking stuff where you're having those informal chats, and I've said it before. There's this like the men's shed, which is like an underground health movement. Their motto is men don't talk face to face, they talk shoulder to shoulder. So they go along and, repair a chair or a table, but they actually end up having all these sort of debriefing, what we would have once called fireside chats while they're doing that process. So
yeah, and and then even, I guess, I like my baseball, I love my golf as well.
Yep.
And realistically, golf is walking around with your mates for 4 hours.
Yep.
You're going to cover off on some chit chat apart from the terrible shots you've been playing and things like that. And I think that's the difference, maybe between men and women. I don't know if you boys have got anyone, but I don't have any mates that I just ring up for a chat. That's weird, dude.
man, I rang one of our friends the other day, and they're like, I'd send them a message going, can I call? Bang, the phone rang so fast. I'm like, no, I'm driving. I can't be stuffed texting.
Yeah.
Because it's illegal, obviously. But they're like, oh God, like I was like, I haven't heard from you in this time, and then you're like, can I call? They're like, I was like, what's your GPS? Where are you? I'm sending 4 vans. Because you get can I call? You're like, we don't chat. Like we're literally like, hey mate, how you going? Yeah, good, thanks. Like that's it. So it's just a proof of life, basically half the time.
And that's massive. What Al's saying about doing things with your mates, whether it's walking, whether it's golf, it's funny, I guess, going back to leaving the police force, and we're probably talking a bit more about mental health or whatever, but even when you reach out to your former colleagues, it runs out of steam pretty quick. It's like, hey, mate, how you been? Yeah, mate, good. What about you? Yeah, man, pretty good. How's the new job? Yeah, mate, pretty good. Anything exciting happening? Nah, mate, not really. All right, I'll see you later. You know what I mean?
Or even when you hang out, you're like, I remember that thing we did 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah.
Yeah, what have you done since then? Well, what do you mean? I talked about that war story over and over again. Like, what do you mean?
there's a theory that I think we probably all suffer from, that if you catch up with a friend and all you talk about is things that have happened, then they're not going to continue in your future.
That's probably a good point.
Yeah, you've got to be, if we're planning a golf trip and we still tell a few worries, no dramas, we're going to do things in the future together. But if we just sit around with a beer and only talk about worries, that's getting into the trouble territory.
So how we going talking about the past for the last 4.5 hours?
Bro, I couldn't even get a lift with you. Well, you reckon we're mates? Like, smash my fingers, wouldn't give a lift to me. And the reason you're here is to pump your own bloody tyres up on your new job that you've got that you wouldn't get me.
We're about to give you a challenge to tie you into the future.
All right,
of the Imposter Podcast.
Let's do it, because I've got a kid to go feed.
Well, I've had a...
We ran the window down in the break. It's got a microwave meal. He's good to go.
Sounds so bad.
No, I'm done with Keynote's feeding.
I've developed one. Did you have something in mind as well?
Oh, gotcha. No, I was going to pump our merch that we don't have yet.
Okay.
Next to the 000's coffee that we don't have at the moment. The
3 zeros.
Yeah, whatever it is. He doesn't care anyway.
000 was a competitor.
Is it?
Yeah.
What about Aussie Warfighters? Aussie Veterans Coffee? Whoever wants to sponsor us, I don't care. You can tell him until he's sponsoring me.
I can't hear you wearing your superannuation hat.
Oh, who is it? Read them out, Al.
Spirit Super, the sponsor of the event that we were at this morning, where you got a lovely hat from.
I'd take the piss out of him, but the girl who works there
we
is
may have got a guest.
Yeah.
From?
Should we call her name out?
Let's do some negotiations first. Yeah.
Oh, well, we've got the right bloke.
Hey now.
Well, Mark McConnell, how do you feel about the
first ever
the
street talk
technique of incremental exposure to help work through some of these, ailments that you've discussed?
Yeah.
Well, I might stand by you with this one as well, because this is something I'm having to practice. But I think at our next event, whether that's going to be one of the open mic nights we do or something like that, whatever the event is, we'll name it. But I reckon we might print out like a QR code for this episode and you'll have to go around and actually self-promote this episode that you'll be on and talk about yourself and what you discussed on the episode.
I want him.
But I'll stand by you on that one.
I want him in an Imposters t-shirt.
Yep.
Doing straight talk. So Al's going to film.
Straight talk would be a good way to do it.
Straight talk with straight talk with Mark McConnell talking about himself.
But we've got to make sure we don't do more damage than good.
Yeah,
what do you mean? That's not our problem. He's literally speaking to a bloody counsellor now. Who cares?
He'd be good to go.
Yeah, all right.
We'll find some amenable way to do it, but a bit like the Negotiator course, to be out and actually promoting this episode and talking to people about what it was all about.
Well, Al's going to be headlining.
I'm going to be having to stand up and do comedy.
He's doing a stand-up on an open mic.
You can be in the crowd for that one.
You can be out the front advertising that. Oh, that's the funny. That's my favourite part.
Be a sinking
if you get up there and you kill it, I'm disappointed.
So it's just going to be stand-up with no comedy attached to it.
Yeah, stand up and choke.
It's going to be Al standing there.
But I want to reiterate, yes, there's a bit of a fun element and a bit of a, group peer pressure, but that's deliberate. The idea of this will be a bit of incremental exposure again to talking about yourself and networking and, hopefully help with your current role as well.
Yeah, beautiful.
And these are things that we all struggle with, is actually getting out and talking about ourselves, and not for the sake of self-promotion, but for the sake of living and existing.
Well, it'll be about you
careers.
self-promoting.
Yeah.
Well, it will, yeah.
Are you happy to come back?
Come back.
As in talk to us.
And tell us how your challenge went.
Yeah, like follow up.
When you
come back on again as another guest.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. DC's mad for it. He's pretty keen to be a host.
We might get a few guests together on an episode as well and just rib each other and
Imposters
bit of banter.
Roundtable.
Yeah, Imposters Challenge.
Microphones.
I've got more. Oh. Don't worry about that. I keep writing them off on tax.
Beautiful.
Happy with
especially
that
now that I've
challenge?
got a podcast. Yeah,
I'm happy.
Good.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm pretty keen to get all the guests on together at one time and have a challenge off.
You have to admit you got an easier run than Dan Caruana got.
Nah, because Dan will fail. Oh, that's how's
the
the confidence of it?
Way to support our guests.
I'm going to text him right now. I don't think you can do it.
Well, Mark McConnell, thanks for joining us,
Beautiful,
mate.
boys.
Some really interesting stories, and
been a pleasure. Hopefully we get some downloads.
Once you self-promote it, no doubt we will.
As long as you don't tell me that it's gone missing and the file's corrupted or something, because that's not going to help my confidence, all right?
Look,
definitely not.
To be honest, DC's had to do this 3 times.
We learned the lessons from him so that you could do one take.
Look, to be honest, this is the first time we've saved it multi-track, so I don't know what's going to happen. It could go bizarre. And Fedora might just be like, nah, not interested.
Cut in.
See you next time.
Thank you, boys.
Under 45 minutes. You're welcome.